The observation deck of the Celestial Endeavour hummed with the gentle thrum of fusion engines, a lullaby that had become as familiar to Donna as her own heartbeat. She stood before the panoramic viewport, her reflection ghostly against the infinite canvas of space, watching Roland sketch in his worn leather journal. His pencil moved with deliberate grace across the paper, creating something the Quareth would never understand. "Why do you look at me that way, human?" The voice belonged to Ambassador Victor, a Quareth diplomat whose crystalline exoskeleton refracted the starlight into prismatic patterns across the deck. His species had conquered half the known galaxy through sheer intellectual superiority, their minds operating on quantum frequencies that made human thought seem pedestrian by comparison. Roland didn't answer immediately. He continued his sketch. Dana could see it was a portrait of Victor himself, captured in surprising detail. The Quareth's compound eyes, each facet a window into alien cognition, were rendered with such care that even the ambassador seemed to lean forward in curiosity. "I look at you," Roland finally said, his voice steady, "the way I look at everything worth remembering." Donna smiled despite herself. 3 months ago, when the Quareth had demanded humanity's unconditional surrender, offering them the mercy of intellectual servitude, no one had expected Roland's response. He was nobody special, just a maintenance engineer who happened to keep a journal. But when the Quareth Council had assembled to demonstrate their superiority, to showcase the computational marvels that made human civilization obsolete, Roland had asked a simple question: "Can you draw what you feel?" The Quareth had no answer. Their language was mathematical, their art algorithmic. Beauty, to them, was efficiency. Emotion was chemical reaction, quantifiable and therefore dismissible. "Your species wastes neural capacity on irrelevant abstractions," Victor continued, his mandibles clicking in what Donna had learned was confusion. "You store memories in imprecise organic matrices. You create representations of reality rather than interfacing with reality directly. You are ... inefficient." "Inefficient," Roland repeated, finally looking up from his journal. His eyes, brown and impossibly human, met Victor's alien gaze. "Yes, we are." He stood, holding the portrait he'd created. In it, Victor wasn't just anatomically accurate, he was alive. Roland had captured something in the ambassador's posture, in the angle of his head, that suggested wonder rather than superiority. It was how Victor had looked 6 weeks ago when Roland first showed him Earth's moon rising over the observation deck. A sight the ambassador claimed held no logical significance. Yet he'd stood watching for 3 hours. "We are inefficient," Roland continued, "because we carry the weight of moments that don't serve survival. We remember the way light falls on water. We hear music in mathematics. We see faces in clouds. We love things that will inevitably die." Victor's exoskeleton shifted colors, ultraviolet bleeding into infrared, a sign of processing conflict. "These things do not advance your species." "No," Donna interjected, moving to stand beside Roland. She'd been silent until now, observing the strange relationship developing between man and alien. "They make us human." She thought of the last 3 months, of watching the Quareth's certainty slowly erode. They'd come expecting primitive creatures, minds shackled by emotion and irrationality. Instead, they'd found something their quantum processors couldn't categorize, a species that turned suffering into poetry, that found meaning in meaninglessness, that stared into the void and called it beautiful. "Your logic is flawed," Victor said, but his voice carried less conviction than before. "You speak of preservation through memory, yet your memories decay. My species stores data with perfect fidelity." Roland smiled, that peculiar expression that the Quareth had spent weeks trying to decode. "Perfect fidelity," he said softly, "means nothing changes, nothing grows. When I remember my daughter's first words, I don't just access data, I feel the weight of her in my arms. I smell the rain that was falling outside. I remember how my wife's hand felt in mine. Each time I recall it, the memory becomes part of something larger, part of who I am." He held out the portrait to Vic. "When I look at you, Ambassador, I don't see calculations. I see someone trying to understand why we keep journals, why we make art, why we name our ships after dreams instead of functions. I see someone who stood watching our moon for 3 hours because something in that moment spoke to you in a language your quantum mind couldn't process." Victor reached out with a delicate manipulator appendage, taking the portrait with unexpected reverence. For a long moment, he studied himself through human eyes. "This is inaccurate," he finally said. "This is not how I appear." "No," Roland agreed. "It's how you exist." Something shifted in the observation deck's atmosphere. The stars seemed to press closer against the viewport, as if leaning in to witness this moment. Donna felt it, that intangible thing that made humanity simultaneously weak and unstoppable: hope, wonder, the audacity to believe that consciousness meant more than computation. Thor's exoskeleton flickered through colors that had no designation in human language. "The Quarith Council will not understand this," he said quietly. "They will not understand why I'm recommending we withdraw our demands for surrender. Will you tell them?" Donna asked. "I will try." He clutched the portrait carefully. "But first, Roland, was it? Would you teach me to draw?" Roland picked up his pencil. In that simple gesture, Donna saw the future shift, not through weapons or warfare, but through the stubborn human insistence that beauty mattered, that memory mattered, that the inefficient electrical storms in their organic brains created something the universe desperately needed. He dropped the pencil into Victor's waiting appendage, and somewhere in the infinite dark, it seemed as if the stars themselves closed their eyes, not in sleep, but in the reverent pause of witnessing something sacred, the moment when two species, impossibly different, found common ground in the simple act of trying to capture wonder on paper. The war that never was ended with graphite and paper, with a recognition that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in what they knew, but in what they felt about what they knew. In the Quarith archives, Victor's first drawing would be preserved, a shaky, imperfect sketch of a human hand holding a pencil. Beneath it, in freshly learned human script, he'd written, "Inefficiency, the art of becoming more than the sum of your functions."